Welcome to Recently Logged, where today we talk about a hero who is yet to enter his own story.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey.
we are here with a guest, if you can't tell.
I hope they would be able to recognize our voices a little bit.
Well, who knows? They might be a first-time listener.
That's true. But yes, here we are.
Would you like to introduce yourself, guest?
Yeah, sure. I'm Kaler, long-time listener, first-time caller, big fan of the podcast.
Yes. I've actually referenced him before.
It's funny, yeah, we mentioned you, I think, the past 2 episodes, yes. If my memory serves.
Yes. It's usually calling me out for my poor taste in movies.
Typically, that's...
You might be the first guest we've had on here that has, substantially listened to the podcast. I mean, Yossi, I know, did a little while, but
yeah, Luke listens to the podcast.
It's true, but I'm saying this is the first guest we've had on since the podcast has gotten going. We knew both of them beforehand.
Yeah,
you're the first person we've had on
Though to be fair,
podcast.
it's still not directly just because he was a fan of the podcast or something.
It's like a King of Comedy situation. He likes.
I was introduced. I was still introduced to the podcast, and I have been listening to the podcast for the better part of a year at this point,
which we do appreciate.
Yes, very much.
Big fan. I'm always hyping you guys up.
So this week we are talking about Rango.
Rango, which I think we've mentioned a couple times for sure.
I feel like we've talked about not in depth,
but you have referenced Rango for sure.
I was about to say, we've seen it quite a few times at the very
least. It's something that all 3 of us here have seen a lot.
Yeah.
It's on my top 4 in Letterboxd.
Wow. Yeah.
Which I can respect, honestly.
But yeah, do we want to get into the basic facts of what they need to know?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Alright, Rango is a 2011 film, rated PG. It's an hour and 47 minutes. Its little IMDb description is, Rango is an ordinary chameleon who accidentally winds up in the town of Dirt, a lawless outpost in the Wild West in desperate need of a new sheriff. That's a pretty good description.
Good description.
One of the better descriptions.
Doesn't catch the vibe, I don't think, but that's excellent.
Right. Its cast features Johnny Depp, Isla Fisher, Timothy Oliphant, Abigail Breslin, Ned Beatty, and Alfred Molina. Oh yeah, and Bill Nye.
Yes. I always forget how to pronounce his name.
It is directed by Gore Verbenski, and it is written by John Logan. Who's the other screenwriter? Because it's John Logan, Gore Verbinski, and James Ward. Wow. Byrkit? I have no idea.
Byrkit?
Oh, no, guys.
It's Byark. I don't know how you say that.
Interesting.
IT. Anyway, the 3 of them wrote the screenplay.
Props to them, honestly.
We've got some other names that you might be familiar with. Hans Zimmer did the score.
Of course.
Excellent.
Roger Deakins did the cinematography.
The best cinematographer probably ever.
It's a powerhouse crew and cast,
right? I'm trying to think of anybody else.
I say it every time.
Note. The choreographer from Pirates of the Caribbean did the choreography.
You can tell. You can tell. Yeah, that's pretty cool, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's anything else of particular interest.
I don't know.
Any awards or anything?
Oh yeah, that's a good question.
I was about to say, I feel like this had some Oscar traction back when it came out, but I could be wrong. I was
yes, it won one Oscar. It won Best Animated Film.
Yes,
as it should.
I was about to say, I would have actually been a little surprised. I couldn't remember. I would have been a little surprised if it hadn't won Best Animated Feature.
What was it even competing against?
Right, that year? I don't know. I remember back when it came out, I was like, that looks like a weird movie.
Oh, wow. It had some... Dang. It beat out Kung Fu Panda 2. I love Kung Fu Panda 2.
Okay, but it should have beat out Kung Fu Panda.
I agree.
I think Kung Fu Panda 2 is better.
Both wonderful animated.
But yeah, nominated that year was Kung Fu Panda 2, Puss in Boots, Rango, A Cat in Paris, and Chico and Rita.
Chico and Rita. I really want to see Chico and Rita. I have not
seen Chico and Rita yet.
So yeah, I beat Chico and Rita and A Cat in Paris, which were pretty, like...
Well, they are both foreign, though.
Yeah, they are foreign.
So, that's to be expected, Micah. It's the Academy, after all.
Couldn't let foreign films win.
But, I'm not upset about Rango winning Best Animated Feature.
I'm not either.
But yeah, those are the basic facts about Rango.
All right, let's get into what we thought of the movie.
All right, so we'll start with our guest here.
Oh,
to be polite.
That's a dangerous move.
What are your thoughts, if you could briefly summarize them? And then put a little rating as a cherry on top of that.
Oh yeah.
What are your brief thoughts on the movie Rango?
Brief thoughts. I mean, obviously, I'm a huge fan of it. It's in the top 4 of my Letterboxd. I definitely love the vibe. Grew up loving westerns.
That's a big help.
So I get a lot of the jokes that they're going for and a lot of the references they're going for.
Yeah.
So for as like a longtime fan of westerns and this being kind of like a meta western movie, big fan of that. I think the comedy in this is really up to snuff. Really like it.
Yeah.
One thing that I probably don't like about it is how, like, it's not, I wouldn't even call it like the pacing.
Okay.
But it seems like a lot of like the emotion for a lot of the characters and situations like comes out of nowhere.
Oh yeah.
Like you go from a zero to 100, which I guess might be part of its charm, but like I would say that might be like the weakest part for me anyways.
That's fair. Yeah. Some of the like weird emotional beats are kind of strange, especially from the side characters.
I would even say like Beans.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Most of her, like, I get that's like half the joke, but there's some moments I'm like, where are you coming from with this, sister?
I get that. Yeah.
I think it's well shot. You don't see a lot of like gritty animated films.
Yeah.
I think the emotional journey of Rango is something that like I connect with, and I have like really like connected with Rango on that journey a lot of times.
I was shocked at how much that was like the case when I watched it the first time, because it's such a kind of a strange like journey for a main character in a kids movie, especially
in a kids movie. It's like pretty existential for the audience, I think.
Right.
But if I had to give it a rating, it has to be 5 stars. I've rated it 5 stars every single time I've logged it on Letterboxd.
I was about to say, I thought you were like contemplating it. I'm like, I didn't think there was anything.
I think I'll lower it to a 4.5 this time.
Like, no, plot twist. Let's give it a 2.
It's a solid 2.
No, 5 out of 5 every single time.
Very nice, very nice.
All right, Robbie, what about you?
What about me? I really enjoy Rango, if you can even believe it. I didn't like it that much the first time I watched it. I just thought it was kind of strange, I think. But it's been a while now. We watched it again like last night, and that was like my 6th time seeing it. It has grown on me considerably since then. I feel like kind of similar to something like Scream almost. I hesitate to cite Scream because this is kind of a different... It's meta in a different way. But I feel like now that I'm more familiar with movies and their structure and the industry, that sort of thing, a lot of the meta-narrative in Rango works a bit better for me. And the whole movie flows a bit better the more I watch it. And again, like it's incredibly well shot. I love the vocal cast. I love just the general animation. Like it's still, I don't know, it still looks so good every time I revisit it. I'm like, dang. But it's a great movie. It's a lot of fun, and it's a fun homage to westerns and just genre films in general. And I don't know, I really admire Gore Verbinski's direction and his dedication to making a solid animated movie, you know? The fact that this is Nickelodeon is still funny to me.
It is crazy. Nickelodeon came out of nowhere with this one.
Nickelodeon has surprisingly produced some good movies.
No, they got some good
look at their
ones,
track record.
Yeah, they got a good catalog. But for a rating, I actually bumped it up this past viewing. I ended up bumping it to a 5. Just because everything flowed so much better this time than it had previously.
I was
And
about to say that already.
I just really respect
The Adventures of Tintin as a Nickelodeon
oh my
movie.
goodness. Tintin. Also, mocap in this movie, very good.
Very good.
It's a oh my goodness, it's a great blend of character animation and mocap, like
Yeah, it's
together.
Actually, well,
It's
I
crazy.
guess I'll mention that
But yeah,
later.
yeah. I gave it a 5. What did you think of Rango? Micah?
I've loved Rango. I've always loved Rango since I first watched it.
You were a bigger fan of it than I was before.
Yeah, it's a very cool movie, and I, again, like both of them said, I've always appreciated, especially the way they, like the direction they took the animation, the fact that it's a gorgeous, like, looking movie. The shots are, for some reason, impeccable.
Well, it's because it's Roger Deakins.
I know, 'cause
right?
it's Roger
That's for some
Deakins.
reason. That's the reason.
The town is always very interesting to me. I
Dirt,
actually really
yeah.
like how kind of immersive the experience of being in the movie is, because it really pulls you in a lot more than most, especially animated kids movies.
Yeah.
But again, and as I've always thought, I think the actual, like you mentioned, the emotion of the movie for me, outside of Rango himself, the actual plot doesn't always work for me super well. I think it's a little poorly paced out. And I think the conclusion could be quite a bit better than it is. And there's something about the film, and again, I usually try and bring a bit more of a critical lens, especially when people are always like when my two guests on here, two other co-people on here are like, it's amazing and perfect.
I never claimed it was perfect.
I know, but you're like 5 out of 5.
I am claiming that it's perfect.
This movie has never fully, like, ever really clicked with me as something that I would give more than a 4 out of 5. And that's what I gave it this time. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It's just never really... It's good, but nothing about it has ever screamed great to me. It is good on all of the right things. It hits everything very, very well, but never elevates itself to something that I'm like, this is one of my favorite things.
Okay.
There is a lot of comedy I absolutely adore in this, and again,
It's such a good screenplay,
It's just
man.
a really
such a
cool,
good
creative
screenplay.
movie. Again, I give it a 4 out of 5.
Very nice, very nice. All Rango fans.
All Rango fans.
All Rango fans.
All
We
the
need,
time.
we need somebody in here who just hates Rango.
We'll just bring in like one guy for like 2 minutes. He gets to rant about the movie, and then
Yeah.
we'll send him back.
Good
out.
luck finding one. That's what I say.
Right? I don't know anyone who like just downright hates Rango. I know some people who think it's kind of boring.
I
but-
think, like,
you know.
the most people, when I talk to them about Rango, it's always like, Rango, like the lizard movie? Like, well, one, it's a chameleon.
No, it's a very odd movie. It's a very unique movie within just kids movies in general. From the very like beginning of like aesthetics to, again, how existential it is.
It's very surreal and existential for like a lot of its runtime,
Which is just
when it's not being a traditional Western, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is just unusual for for like, you know, a kids movie.
Yeah.
I want to know how this thing got pitched, man. Like, how did this get made?
I don't even know.
I was actually doing some research into the production of this because I was very curious beforehand. And Gore Verbenski, after the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, he wanted to do something a bit smaller, and somehow he got on the idea for this. And he wanted to, if I understand correctly, he wanted to do kind of an independently funded movie.
Nice.
And he wanted to kind of make his own thing and make it family entertainment that he would appreciate. But then they ran out of funding. And apparently Paramount and Nickelodeon stepped in. And
Nice.
he was able to actually get it finished. But he kind of talked quite a bit about how it was kind of sad to him that there's not a whole lot of independent animation anymore, that you can't really, to compete with studios like Pixar and DreamWorks and stuff, you can't make a movie by yourself.
And I think that's a shame, especially like with a movie like this. Like, you would be hard pressed to make something unique. like this,
absolutely.
especially today, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
I think it's gotten worse.
Even more
really.
so than like 2011, 2010. Like, you don't see a whole lot of deviation. Like, you're seeing like Pixar, Disney, like they own it.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? Like when you think animation, you think of them.
I was about to say, the closest, I could never see Disney making something like this. I could
no.
maybe see DreamWorks getting something close to this,
Maybe.
but
Yeah.
even
DreamWorks
then,
maybe, yeah.
But even then, it's just like, it's an unusual animated film.
It's funny in terms of like edginess in kids movies. DreamWorks actually did like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a little more spicy than anything they've put
I guess,
out
yeah,
before.
that is like the closest
In what way?
thing.
Well, just in like
'Cause
profanity
there's
and
language.
general
Well, there's language.
That
That's
sort of
language
thing.
in Shrek, Remy.
I know.
That was a different time.
But I'm saying, like, I don't think they would ever reach this level of, like, abrasive kind of movie making
Yeah.
that you would get in
Lots. I
Rango.
was about to say, there's lots of like death, drinking, language.
a lot of very, like, gross, photorealistic, like, just gore and, like, weird wound infections, that kind of thing, you know? Stuff you wouldn't typically
no, that's
see.
conjunctivitis.
Good to know it's not contagious.
Oh my gosh.
It's hereditary.
But I think one of the funniest things about this movie, especially with all of us having seen this so much, is when we were watching this last night, all of us were just quoting it. We could quote this entire thing, and I think that is actually a big praise to what the movie is doing, because the dialogue of this movie is
such
really great.
dialogue.
Quotable. And like, and everything is like so slick.
Yep.
Like every time like Rango goes on like a monologue, every single one of his monologues, I think they're like
It's
so
beautiful.
slick and well paced. Like,
Yeah. It's amazing.
like when he's like marching around the town in front of the hawk. I think, or the Jenkins brothers.
Yeah, I love the
Retelling.
Jenkins brothers so
Jenkins
much.
brothers,
That
baby.
story is so good.
It's so good. It is so good.
Yeah, no, I said, like, I praised the screenplay. Really, the dialogue is, like, one of the most standout things about this.
Yeah.
Outside of, like, it's pretty smart, like,
Mm-hmm.
kind of metatextual metaphor thing that it's going for. Its dialogue is just phenomenal.
Right.
And I don't know if it was written with Johnny Depp in mind, but it definitely feels like Rango is a part that Johnny Depp is like made for almost. It's
Well,
like one of those witty,
Yeah.
unconventional heroes.
And one of the things that kind of leads into that a lot, and I was going to mention this whenever we talked about the animation specifically, but I don't know, this is a decent
good
segue
as
to
time as
mentioning
any.
it. The way they actually did the animation for this and the way they quote unquote shot this was they had actors on sets. Like
Which
actual,
I didn't know
actual
for a
sets,
long time.
and filmed that to where they could get their performances the way they wanted to and like match their physicality and everything with the animators. So, you know, a lot of Rango's like physicality and movement and
Which is
everything
great.
is Johnny Depp.
Yeah, it comes from like the actors themselves. Like if you look up the behind the scenes, any videos of that, like,
Yeah.
like 95% of the movie was like done like on a set.
Which
Yeah.
is crazy.
And then they animated it afterwards. So it's like they made the movie twice.
I was about to say, Tintin is kind of produced that same way, I suppose.
Well, Tintin,
not to the
Tintin
same degree.
is a fully like mocap.
Yeah, it's a
kind
full
of movie.
mocap movie. This is I forget what they called it. I think there was a term they used for it, like emo cap or something
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
half. It's pretty much like half
It's
mocap.
half mocap.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's insanely cool. I don't know of any other movies really that I've seen that use this kind of like technology or even just approach to animation.
Yeah, and like,
pretty cool.
and like I said, like the one of the biggest things, and Kaler actually mentioned this when we were watching the movie yesterday, was that like I had just mentioned on our Zootopia episode last week, how sterile a lot of 3D animated movies are, especially just how like unlived in and flat and like simple the textures are.
Yeah.
This is like the opposite of that.
Well, they're very visually kind of like rounded off, like very, very plain, very easy to understand animation in a lot of 3D animated movies nowadays.
Yeah.
Rango, it's shot with such a clarity that it doesn't matter that there's a lot of like texture.
Yeah,
and
I was
grit
about to
and
say
everything.
sometimes it like you look at a character and it takes you a second to even identify what they are because
Yeah.
they're just this bundle of like fur and weird gross things. And
I love doing like super close-ups on some of the characters. Like the one, I don't know what he is. He might be like a cat or something.
Who?
He's like got like a super long face. He's got like
the wide one?
I think
he's
like a
be
cat,
like
right?
It's a glass of water.
Exactly, that guy.
I think he's supposed to be like a weasel or
Like a
something. I
weasel
don't know.
Sure.
I don't think any of them are like cats because that's a predatory animal.
Well, I feel like
That's true.
I mean, I feel like the dark, broody. With the hat and the trench coat.
Yeah, you might be right.
And he's one of the ones that fight over the canteen of water.
Exactly,
That one. I think he might be a cat.
I don't know. It's weird. Because like you have like foxes and lizard characters
That's
at the
true.
same
There is
size,
a fox,
and bunnies,
It is
and
true.
like all of these different characters like about the same size, and yet you have like a really big snake and a really big
I was about
bird.
to say, the fact that the fox is fitting a chameleon for an outfit in this movie, and they're standing
And a
roughly
spider.
the same size.
It was a spider, a fox, and a chameleon.
It's funny.
They all walk into a bar.
literally.
Quite literally.
But yeah, no, there's this shot like when Rango's walking into the bar. It's like a super close up on one of the characters, and like you can just kind of drink in all of the like environmental stuff and the lighting and just the textures. It's beautiful.
The character designs are super unique and really feel like because a lot of. And I hate to be super cynical towards animation, but it's pretty easy to be cynical towards with the way it's run. But like, there is not a single Disney or Pixar movie where a character is not made to sell something.
To sell a plush.
To sell a plush, to sell a backpack, to sell something. That is just Disney. And they can make great movies, but
they continue to
the
make
market
great
of
movies.
them is always a part of them. Whereas this, not a single character feels like they were made to sell anything.
No.
You could not slap one of these characters.
You could not give this toy to a child.
On a plush, you know?
Right, I would not give any of these characters to my children in a stuffed like form. They're too pointy, you know.
Nightmares, pointy.
Oh gosh,
It's really, and I think that really benefits this movie and what it's going for, because I think if this movie looked like a Pixar movie, it would lose so much.
it would lose a lot of its personality.
Yeah, it would.
Of what it's going for.
Yeah.
And again, Pixar would lean probably away from a lot of its like kind of Western comedy grit that it's going for.
It does have grit.
And I think it also plays into like we were just able to like describe a character and we all knew exactly what character that was. And I think that's like really like a big benefit to this movie. Like every character has like that one little
I don't think there's a single character that looks similar. Even
Like,
Rango as a chameleon has a
like
huge,
the lopsided eyes and like the
crick in his neck.
Oh my gosh.
All of the characters look like lived characters.
Yeah, and like they're all just so identifiable when you go through it. Like
It's crazy, man.
and I was watching the director's commentary for it
Oh, nice.
a while ago, and like that they said like they wanted the Town of Dirt especially to be like a movie by itself. Like you could take Rango out of it and you could just watch these people moving around and like you could create the story just by watching them.
Yeah.
And I think they do a really good job at that.
Oh yeah.
Every character like you just want to like dig into, and they're so unique and like they have their own personality and you can see that personality like on them.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome.
That's good character design.
And I was about to
character
say, and too, like that's I think that's a strength of Gore Verbenski as a writer and director. Because if you look at his other work, one of the best things that he does is balance an ensemble with their own personalities really well.
Man.
The Pirates of the Caribbean movies
That's
are
any
entirely
rated
built
movies.
on that.
Yeah.
So this is very much like a strong suit of Gore Verbinski, but it's taken to a very unique place that you don't usually see something like this just in an animated kids movie.
Yeah, I was about to say, because it's animated, because obviously Gore Verbinski has like proved he can direct a good like ensemble like action comedy genre film, you know?
Yeah.
But in animation, it feels like a completely new thing, you know? Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
But since we've just been kind of going for a bit, do we have any questions to throw out? Because obviously there's one that we will get to, but I'm leaving it open. Do we have any questions?
Oh gosh, I didn't have anything prepared.
If we don't have anything, I'll just default to the
To the classic question
the
that
classic
everyone's unprepared for, probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's do that then.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
What is your favorite scene or sequence?
Scene or sequence?
Scene or sequence.
There's a lot of good ones in
There's
here.
a lot of really good ones.
If anything, Gore Verbenski knows how to direct a sequence, man.
That's a fact.
I mean, heck, I'll go first.
Okay.
If you guys
no,
are
I'm
still
thinking.
thinking.
I'm thinking.
Because I kind of
have
have
it down right now.
I have a couple like favorite moments that kind of build into my favorite scenes. Because typically in a scene for this movie, there's typically like something that kind of bothers me about most scenes in this. Just the pacing of the scenes typically, and just various little things, not big things. But there are a couple scenes that I think are kind of like goofy, but kind of totally fit the stuff that I like. I think the entire sequence of, even though it's got cut in the middle, the sequence of Rango walking into the bar for the first time to the end of the Jenkins brother explanation, that is really, really good. I love that entire section. It's really funny, creative, great introductions to the characters and ideas and everything. And then I also really, for some reason, and this may just be because I think it's goofy and fun, but I really love the Rattlesnake Jake stuff after he comes back. Any Rattlesnake Jake stuff after Rango comes back.
Excellent.
It's so good.
Because one of my least favorite parts of this movie is the fact that it's a liar reveal plot. I never like those, especially with this one, because like you said, it's weirdly like emotional, like over the top emotional, out of nowhere from our side cast.
Yeah.
So once you get that kind of out of the way and you get to the Spirit of the
like
West
the true
stuff,
third act.
and then
stuff,
you come back, that stuff with Rattlesnake Jake. I just really love Rattlesnake Jake as a character.
It's a very good character. Like, actually scary even.
Right? And his performance,
got like the Sauron eyes.
is going crazy with
going
that.
stupid out there.
He's like, brother.
Dude, we watched this like at home, but we had the subwoofer like I had like a few feet away from me was the subwoofer, and it was like booming.
Thirsty brother.
Exactly. Like I didn't know he had it in him.
His voice is booming.
I know. He's got so much bass, like a rasp to it. So good.
But yeah, those are probably my two like favorite moments in the movie.
I think those are good moments, especially like in like the saloon sequence.
Oh my goodness.
Like it's like almost a second introduction to Rango.
Yeah.
Or even like the first, because you never learn Rango's like real name. You know?
Well, honestly, I don't think he has one. Like I'm sure he has one.
Brand new pet.
I'm sure he has one that like the humans gave to him.
Yeah.
But I don't think he would, from the way we hear humans talking a little bit, I don't think he would have understood like. The Spirit of the West is different. I don't qualify him because I don't think he would have really like taken that as like his name, because I don't think he had. I straight up just don't think he had a name that he like said was his name before he got Rango.
Which I guess is also part of it. Like, you know, who am I?
Exactly. He had no name.
The guy,
no
the
other
hero,
people.
the protagonist.
I was about to say, Rango's identity crisis is really like the center of this movie for him, anyway.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think I don't know. I find that really compelling. It's nice. I think. If I had to pick a favorite scene, I would probably go with the finale. It's just really well staged. And again, you get Rattlesnake Jay. And I don't know. It's just really good. And again, the writing, the dialogue.
It's just so good.
Immaculate.
I love how goofy his little Gatling gun
his Gatling gun rattler is.
Oh my gosh. That's character design.
Getting all the ain't no hawk.
That
bunch
sequence,
of bass.
that series of shots when he's shooting like bullets up into the sky at the bats.
It looks so cool.
It is amazing. Oh my god.
Oh, it is excellent.
It looks so good.
Dude, I love all of the gun stuff in this so much.
Oh, I know. The gunplay in this, I think, is great.
I was about to say
Absolutely,
the one thing that I wish there was more of in this was guns, but you can't have too many like absolute like just shootouts and stuff in this PG movie.
But yeah, what about you?
I've been trying to narrow it down between two shots actually.
Okay.
One is the canyon chase sequence.
Ooh.
I think that is just such a well choreographed action sequence.
It's amazing.
Like the balance between watching, I don't know how to describe it, the inbreds,
Yeah.
the inbred moles.
Yes.
Like watching like the father like direct all the fighting done by the bats.
Oh yeah.
And then like you cut back to like our motley crew trying to deal with all of that.
Yeah.
Like you have Spoons up there just like just doing silly, dramatic
I love spoons.
Western stuff.
Spoons is
How he
the
drops
best.
the gun
Yeah.
and everything else. Or when Rango falls on him, or you like go, or like even the small details, like you mentioned last night with the owl,
Oh
and
my
like
gosh.
when he's getting punched,
He's
he just
getting
like
punched in
turns
the
his
face.
head
He
180,
turns his head all the way around.
and then just hits him back. And then the other sequence I would say is the whole like the spiritual journey sequence when he's kicked out of dirt by Rattlesnake Jake,
Yeah.
Like the crossing the road and everything.
crossing the road, meeting the spirit of the West.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that's
I think
good.
that is like, because I think that is really like the core of the movie, and I think that is where you see Rango finally accept, like, this is who I am.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, you finally see him understand, like, it doesn't matter who you were, that you're nobody. It matters. It's the deeds that make the man.
Yeah.
I was
Exactly.
about to say you get to decide who you are.
Yeah, and I think that's
by
excellent.
what you do.
And I also like that insight that heaven is defined by eating Pop-Tarts with Kim Novak.
Oh my gosh. It's another great line.
I actually think, again, I think that scene is very interesting in general. If we look at, like, because again, you can grab quite a bit of meta narrative from this.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's like Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, it's
with
basically
his,
Clint Eastwood.
with his movie awards and
Right.
like everything, and how that relates to kind of what I think this movie is saying about movie productions.
yeah.
I think that's very interesting.
Well, Micah, you got like icon of old cinema driving around in a golf cart as
Yeah, and I
like
think
your
with his film award.
Like, and I think that's like even part of it, like,
Yeah.
because we were saying all last night, like, this was trying to reintroduce the audience to westerns,
absolutely. Yeah.
and I think that it was fitting that you kind of have Clint Eastwood dressed as the man with no name,
yeah.
like basically scavenging, like doing like L.A. hobo things,
Right.
and like I think that it's like a sign. Like that's just trying to like describe the state of westerns. Like,
Yeah.
Like at one point, Clint Eastwood as the man with no name was the guy. You know?
Exactly, yeah.
It's just like the Marvel movies today. Like,
Exactly.
Every other movie was a western,
Yeah.
and then now, like, yeah, you have all of these awards, but like, what does it leave you with?
Nobody even remembers they exist.
a sardine can of fish hooks.
Exactly, yeah,
That's what
yeah.
you got.
No, it's. I was kind of blown away, honestly, at how rich a lot of the environmental stuff is. A lot of the just general, like, you can see the like water metaphor working in a lot of different ways. Like, just in general, like, you could read it as a pretty plain funding thing for movie productions.
Yeah, I mean, you could take this entire
yeah.
thing and pretty clearly, especially from interviews I've seen from Gore Verbenski around this, and pretty clearly see it as like him thinking that the movie industry has grown to the point where whoever has the money in the movie industry, the different studios, are deciding completely what films
Exactly,
are.
yeah.
They are deciding everything
And
about
I think
the films.
it's even like when you walk in on the mayor and he's like, look at him, so desperate for water they'll follow it anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think you see that a lot, like in a pretty sad sense. Like,
Oh, yeah.
You see the movies like Illumination, what they're doing
Oh,
right
gosh.
now, and like kind of how all of the Pixar movies are starting to look pretty much exactly the same. Disney movies are starting to look exactly the same. Like, and I think that shows like they're willing to give out the water to you, but you need to meet them and like produce the movie that they
Yeah.
want, not the movie that needs to be made.
I was
Yeah.
about to say a big part of Gore Verbinski's career, and even this movie has been trying to restore genres that have died.
Yeah, dead genres, yeah.
And like you can very clearly see that with like westerns. He did this, and why did I just lose the name of it?
Lone Ranger.
Lone Ranger.
Lone Ranger.
And like he's always tried to, and you could see his like disappointment in the fact that you couldn't go through a normal studio and get this made, because they would say it's not the genre of the time, it's not merch approved,
Oh
it's
my
not
gosh,
all of these
yeah.
different things that the studio would control over.
Yeah.
And you can even see it, and I guarantee a lot of that disappointment comes from working on the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, because I don't know if you guys know a lot about the Pirates of the Caribbean productions. I do. I was very interested and I learned a lot.
Well,
and
producing anything with
by
Disney.
by the third film, it was not what he wanted it to be. Disney
and you can definitely see that shift.
I was about
Oh,
to say
yeah.
Disney turned it into something completely different. They wouldn't even let him include. It was one of the biggest scenes. He was so mad at it. It was one of his like key moments in the trilogy that he had planned was how Jack Sparrow became labeled as a pirate in the first place, was that the East India Trading Company was having him move slaves, and he wouldn't do it.
Yep.
And
That's like a vital part of his character.
They cut that out because Disney thought it was too critical of like the British Empire.
Oh my
The
god.
The British Empire fell like 90 years before that movie came out.
But that's just kind of evident of what Disney and I guarantee he was very upset by that because Disney
would be.
And I mean,
Yeah.
he wasn't involved really at all except for getting money from 4 and 5 for Pirates of the Caribbean, and I guarantee he wasn't happy with those at all. They're completely different. If you look at Curse of the Black Pearl versus the last 2 Pirates of the Caribbean
Oh my
movies,
gosh.
they're
Night and day.
yeah, they're completely different. He was trying to revive a genre, and Disney took it somewhere completely different.
Took it somewhere wrong.
So I guarantee a lot of that kind of disappointment went into Rango, because this was like the next thing he worked on.
Yeah.
No, I honestly would have been like shocked if it wasn't the next thing he worked on, because it feels so like I don't want to say like outright spiteful, but it does feel at least angry at like just generally the state of movies, and like the whole thing is set
I was about to say, if you read
in the desert. And
if you read it like
Yeah.
that reading, it is an inherently angry film at
I was about to say,
studios.
It really is.
they drag the like evil studio head guy away to die.
Yeah, like
But yeah, no, reading it that way is honestly what pushed it to a 5 for me, because I think that narrative, I find it very compelling, even outside of just the traditional Western narrative that it's telling, and Rango's personal narrative. I find that meta narrative very compelling when I'm watching it. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I think
that's what pushed it over the edge.
Yeah,
for me.
I figured since we
Yeah.
talked about that and you came to your big realization.
I was like, oh my gosh, how did I not realize this? Yeah.
To gasp, this movie has a metaphor, Robbie. The movie all about how it's a metaphor.
I know.
like literally like they say like directly into the camera a couple of times, like it's a metaphor.
Exactly.
Dr. Marks does.
Dr. Marks.
The Roadkill does.
Yeah.
Rango even does at one point.
But yeah, it's very interesting too, because you can have that reading of the overall sense of the movie, and I think that makes Rango a very interesting character, because you have this reading of like kind of studios controlling the output of movies and genres being essentially killed off.
Exactly, yeah.
Because studios don't think they're viable anymore. And then you have Rango, a very interesting protagonist to live in that kind of metaphor world, a character who does not know who he is, who does not have essentially a creative voice.
Well, I don't know. I read it initially as just audiences being kind of unacquainted with what they want. They kind of lost in a modern state of movies, because there's just, it's all kind of blurred together, you know?
Yeah, and the more we've gone on into the kind of filmmaking that's made now, it is very much, it's a lot harder to track something like this is the movie trend at the time. This is the artistic trend at the time, because everything is just kind of a blend of constant new.
And I mean, and Rango is familiar with stories like an audience member would be, but he's only familiar with them in a very archetypal, like very simplistic light.
Yeah.
And I think it's very apparent, like we talked about this last night too, like the how Rango does understand the situation that he's in. Like he understands movies.
Exactly.
Like he has seen many movies. He's a student of drama in the movie. Like he's supposed to be like a student of film.
Yeah.
So, and that's how he can adopt the Rango character so quickly.
Yes.
Because he understands
Westerns.
what the guy, the hero, the protagonist is supposed to be.
Exactly, yeah.
But he has no idea how to be that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's interesting.
So I think it's interesting. Like he is the audience surrogate, but he's supposed to be like an experienced audience surrogate.
Yeah.
I think an interesting thing. I'll just throw this in here because I thought it was interesting, and I don't really have a decent time to throw it in otherwise.
All right.
But I think it's interesting too because it's not directly based off of this, I don't think, but there was a show in the '60s called Rango, a western starring Tim Conway, where he played.
Wow.
He played kind of like an incompetent, goofy sheriff who he goes to this town, and then because he goes to this town, it actually ends up bringing more trouble to the town. So very, very Rango.
I need to track that down. It sounds like fun.
But yeah, I'm sure there was inspiration drawn from that, but that's more of just like a
fun fact.
That's neat, not really a.
I mean, I think that's also like, it's obvious that the creative team behind this was very, very familiar with the Western genre. There are so many small
references to specific,
very specific movies, like, and some of them kind of niche movies, like, or even niche series, like Rango.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't know that unless you like knew Western.
You knew Western serials.
I was about to say,
yeah.
And again, Gore Verbenski, I think, just loves genre films. I think he loves them to death.
Yeah.
Because you can tell in Pirates of the Caribbean and The Lone Ranger and Rango and all of his stuff, like they are just in love with the tropes of that genre and the movies that came previously in that genre.
Which again, I think Scream is a pretty decent comparison. Again, it's a different kind of like meta genre film, but it features characters again that are kind of familiar with the tropes of the genre. But see, Rango doesn't like deconstruct it the way Scream deconstructs like slashers, you know. So it's slightly different, but
yeah, I was about to say I don't know if there's much comparison to Scream outside of the meta.
I was about to say meta.
It's completely different meta.
It's a different flavor of meta. I just really admire it.
In Rango, like it's like they realize the tropes. Mm-hmm. And then they double down.
Then they do them.
Robbie not bring up Scream in a podcast episode challenge.
I don't know, man. I put Scream in my
expert.
top 4. I put Scream in my top 4.
Scream's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's like my favorite horror movie. But it is funny how much you're like, it's like Scream, when it's not like Scream.
Did you mention Scream in the last podcast?
I'm pretty sure he did.
The Zootopia.
I think he mentions it almost every episode. He just is like, it's like Scream. And I'm like, Robbie, that's not... It's not like
it's just like Scream for real.
But do we have another question though?
I suppose so.
You suppose so? So you have a question?
Yeah. I was just gonna ask like what you guys generally thought of, like we mentioned kind of the flow of the movie. I was gonna say what did you guys think of the general like plot pacing, the emotional pacing, that sort of thing?
So, kind of like what I said in my general overview of the movie. Like, I like the pacing of the movie, like on a larger scale.
Yeah, I'm never bored.
The macro pacing of it. Because like it's like you look up and the movie's over. Like you never have a chance to like sit down. I think this movie in some places could have benefited from a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of the relationships are underdeveloped, like Rango and Beans. Like, I think Beans. I think like that relationship could have been more impactful, and I think it actually would have helped the story a little bit to have that be a bit more impactful. But by and large, like it's like constant, nonstop. Like you're going, and it's done.
Yeah.
But I think
something I admire.
Yeah, typically something I admire. I think that this could have done with a little bit of breathing room, but I think the biggest pacing issue is at like the micro level, where like even within a line of dialogue, like they'll go from and Beans is like the one person I'm thinking of whenever this happens, but like, and I know it's part of the charm.
Yeah.
But even at other points, like it feels like they'll say something and then like immediately transition into like a different train of thought.
Yeah. No, I get that. You get kind of a whiplash.
You get kind of a whiplash effect. And I don't really like at that smaller level, but I think at some points like it can be counted as part of the charm of the character.
Yeah.
So I think it works sometimes.
Interesting, yeah. What about you, Micah? Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
The pacing and the structure of this are probably one of my like least favorite parts of the movie. It's still not inherently bad.
No, that was the thing I didn't like about it back when I first watched it. I was like, this is weird.
But it's mainly, I think the first half of this movie is paced pretty much perfectly.
Yeah.
I think it's really in the second half where, again, it kind of feels
the posse
a little
thing.
Yeah, it kind of feels a little like rushed, because with the posse you kind of come to a bit of like a standstill, and then you kind of get in, so it's a good pause moment.
Well, they sprinkle in like some mystery.
I was about to say there's good things to keep you like rolling with the plot. You're still into it. There's still things happening, but at a certain point it goes a little too fast. About when they get back from the town with the dad and the two to take them in, like that entire section is just really weirdly paced out.
I would cite that like when they come up and like start rioting and everything, I would cite that as honestly like one of the worst scenes in the movie, and it's not even bad really. But like it does kind of feel like there's like something missing there at that point in the movie.
And then it kind of gets a little rushed, and like the moment stuff is going on with Rango rather than Rattlesnake Jake, then it's immediately like, oh, he lied. Then everybody's like, oh, and then
they
like,
speed right through
like
it.
it just goes. And I think and while I'm glad that this movie is not the kind of
like
movie
super drawn out
that's like super melodramatic and like spends like the entire time being like all the characters feel extremely betrayed and like they're like forever mad at him, because that just isn't the kind of relationship he had with these people or the kind of movie that this is.
That would have been so weird.
So it would have been, but it feels like just oddly paced out on a scene-to-scene level.
I would almost say, like, on that vein, like, that's what I was saying, like, it needs a little bit more breathing room at places.
Yeah.
I think... I might be biased in this, because I love Rango. But, like, if this was a 2-hour film, like, or maybe, like, an hour, even an hour 50.
Yeah.
Like, it just needs, like, 10 to 15 more minutes to, like, allow a scene to, like, rest.
No, I totally agree with that. Yeah. And then, like... I don't know. There's just there's weird stuff in the structure of this film. I think a lot of ideas are presented in a way like kind of haphazardly, in terms of different reveals, even with like the mayor's plan and everything. It's like weirdly sprinkled in there pacing wise.
I guess.
And
so.
there's just a lot of odd
you get a lot of information at once instead of like a slow spread when it comes to the mysteries. So it doesn't feel quite as satisfying when you like figure it out.
Yeah, a lot of the pacing problems I think for me come down to the fact that you feel like you have a good amount of natural time to get into the world at first, and then get presented the mysteries. But by the time any of the mystery solving or reveals come to happen, it's just going fast. It's just going through everything.
I'm imagining like Rango in like a Sherlock Holmes hat with a magnifying glass. Now we keep saying mystery.
It's a twist villain movie.
Twist villain,
kind of.
Oh boy. If you're a Western fan, it is not a twist villain.
I don't know, if you have like eyeballs, it's not a twist villain. He's like, whoever controls the water controls everything.
That could have meant anything.
He says everything very like slowly and evilly.
Very evil, yeah. Dude, that shot when we first are introduced to I don't remember his name, but the turtle.
The mayor.
Yeah, the mayor.
I don't know if
I think he's always like referred to as
just
the mayor.
Yeah, but with that shot when he's first introduced with the water
Oof.
That's the craziest thing I've ever seen, man.
I love. And Robbie too. The film is telling you that it's not a good thing that he's going to see the mayor when he's sitting in the lobby with the two guns.
with the guns pointed at him.
When they say "be careful" and then it hard cuts to.
I was about to say it's not a very twist.
I know. It is great though, man. Like basically any shot from this movie has so much like, it's such a nice composition because it's Roger Deakins, and it has so much like beautiful like imagery and just general look to it. It looks like a Western, but it also doesn't look stale or flat or anything.
And I think it's because they so expertly like captured that part of the country.
Yeah.
Like they somehow made the Mojave Desert look amazing.
They made it look good and not just
as someone who has lived in the Mojave Desert like for weeks at a time, I'm going to tell you that it doesn't feel like that whenever you're there. But like they have done such a good job of like especially like after the exile sequence, like where he's like walking on the sand dunes, and then even after the Spirit of the West, where you catch the clouds going across like the salt flats. Oh my gosh,
it's breathtaking.
Next time you go to the Mojave Desert, you need to watch Rango while you're out there.
Oh, I did the last time I watched on the bus out there, and then I was like, then I really connected spiritually with the line, like my teeth are chapped.
The general
you really get into it's an immersive experience. You feel as dry as Rango.
Definitely, I took I counted as like a pilgrimage really out to the Mojave, to connect more with Rango. Like that's what it was for me.
Nice. But yeah, just the general use of lighting and color here is amazing, because I like during the last big dramatic sequence when he's coming back, like he's returned from his journey, I noticed how desaturated a lot of the stuff is compared to like some of the other points in the movie, and the way they
very gray.
I was about to say the way they play with the color at times is very interesting, because the movie is kind of desaturated sometimes, but then also like you'll get shots with like Rango in the mud and everything.
The more Western-y it gets, the more colorful it is.
Exactly. Yeah. It's pretty cool. It's a cool way to approach color in an animated film, and you can completely control it.
I was about to say it's very interesting too, because on a lighting level, I think this movie is very impressive, because a lot of 3D animated movies, especially, because they have complete control over lighting and can just like make everything visible.
You can just throw a light wherever and you don't have to worry about it.
A lot of movies, they'll have like a lot of animated movies will have good lighting, like you can see everything.
Well, they have to be.
It's not a live action situation anymore where you can't see anything because people just aren't lighting anything anymore.
Well, they are lighting, just not very dynamically, Micah.
But I was about to say that the lighting in this is extremely dynamic. Like there's certain moments that specifically that I noticed, like when they're out in the desert at night, it really looks like the lighting of when you're out in the desert at night. Like it looks that kind of dynamic. Like you can feel the physical space of the open sky and the moon reflecting down onto the sand. They did such a good
job.
And like you can just
the way they capture perspective is really
you can feel the perspective of the lighting, and that kind of runs throughout. There's not a moment where the lighting just feels like it's kind of just there.
Yeah.
I think another good moment of that is where when Rango initially enters dirt, you have that bright desert feel. Like it just feels blinding.
I love how
bright that is.
And then, overexpose the desert sometimes.
And then it cuts almost immediately into the saloon where it's dark with shots of light coming in through the wood slats. And I think that is such a good contrast. And I think even within the saloon, you see the beams of light coming through, where some of the stuff is hidden, but to give it, but you can still see the eyes coming out.
Yeah,
I just think it's done so well there. I
think it's very interesting.
That's one of the coolest environments.
Because I think they play with relative light a lot too. Because you're right. When he first comes into the desert, it's a lot more overexposed. And then when he first walks into the saloon, it's very, very dark. But later, when it comes back, when he's talking about the Jenkins brothers, I think honestly, I couldn't tell you, but I'm pretty sure it's a little brighter in the saloon.
It's
not as dark as when he first came in. Like his eyes adjusted to the saloon lighting.
Yeah.
Which is, again, it's very cool how they play around with dynamic lighting, dynamic color, a lot of stuff, and again, that a lot of movies, especially 3D animated movies, just don't really do a lot.
They don't.
Yeah, no, I think actually I was reading Yossi's review, which again, if you're familiar with our podcast guests, you know who he is. But he had mentioned that Gore Verbenski could have directed this and shot it in basically any way he wanted, but he shoots it he has to occupy the actual physical space that the camera's in.
He worded it like this. He said, one of the most interesting things about this movie is that even though Gore now has limitless options for where to put and how to put the camera, he still shoots this thing like a real movie. Grounded camera work, more interesting in framing and lighting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, you get a lot of very classical cinematography, but it all feels very modern and intentional. It's nice, I think. Which, again, cool way to shoot a movie like this.
Oh, I think it's so cool.
Yeah. There's this one shot, I don't know if anyone else saw it, but there's this shot of Spoons during the canyon chase sequence, like right as it's getting going, where he mounts on like the little bird thing. I don't remember what it is.
No, it's Roadrunner.
Roadrunner, right.
Yeah.
He gets on top of it and he starts running, and like the camera like is dollying next to him, dollying in quotes.
Yeah.
And there's they have like a dolly zoom, like in Jaws or Vertigo or whatever, where the horizon like slowly closes in as the shot is like getting subtly like faster and closer. It's a great like visual ramp up to that sequence. And I was like, what animated movie's doing it like this, you know? I was like, Brad Bird's the only other like animation director I've seen do like a dolly zoom in his movie and have it like work so well. It's crazy. It's a movie with class.
Shout out to Brad Bird.
Shout out to Brad Bird. Shout out to Brad.
I would say that Brad Bird and Gore Verbenski are surprisingly similar filmmakers
in tone and like style. Yeah, I would tend to agree. Even Brad Bird's live action work feels like not quite as wacky as a Gore Verbinski movie can feel sometimes, but just as kind of like genre obsessed as he is.
Yeah.
Like something like Tomorrowland is like it's like a bad version of a Gore Verbinski movie.
I was about to say, poor Brad Bird. It's just not subtle. That's his big issue.
Got no subtlety.
He's got zero subtlety.
I mean, Gore Verbinski is not exactly subtle. I think it's when he chooses to not be subtle.
I'm gonna be honest.
That's it.
I'm gonna be honest. I think Rango is a more subtle movie than like 90% of Brad Bird's works.
It is. And even then, they're like staring into the camera telling you about the movie.
I was about to say, Brad Bird movies always lay out exactly what they're about and exactly what they're supposed to mean.
Right. No.
That's fair enough.
But yeah, man. Rango. What a picture.
What a film. What a
movie.
What a little ditty.
little ditty I like to call Rango.
Do we have any more questions? Do you have a question, Kaler?
Small question, because I know we're starting to get kind of deep into it.
All right.
What do we think about the score?
The score.
We didn't even talk about the score.
We haven't discussed the score once.
Love the
What's
score.
wrong with us?
It's like a half musical, this movie. It has musical punctuation at the very
Rango does sing at one point.
It's true. Rango is singing. There's music. It's a musical.
It's not a musical.
Dang it.
But no, I really like the score for this. I think it's a very unique flavor of Hans Zimmer. Because Hans Zimmer does not normally like sound like this. But it's a very
lot
cool,
more guitars.
I was about to
usual.
say it's a very cool pairing of like a very very Western sounding thing with a very modern kind of rock influenced kind of mix. It's kind of like hearing Toto do the score for Dune. In terms of like it's a weird
in Lynch's Dune.
It's Toto.
Oh my gosh! I gotta see this.
It's like a very weird, unique sounding score that fully fits the genre, but is not quite something like anything else you've heard.
Interesting. Yeah. No, there's a real I don't know. There's a real nice dramatic flair to a lot of the score and a nice like clean sound to it. There's some flourishes in this that reminded me of Dune's score in a very like, you know, I probably just because I knew it was Hans Zimmer is the reason it came to mind. But
I was about to say you could do that with a lot of Hans Zimmer.
Yeah,
scores.
I was about to say the way it is scored, there's a lot of like nice flourishes and stuff, and a lot of smaller musical moments that punctuate stuff more than like a continuous score. So really the only time we get like any bombastic score moments are during the action sequences and everything. Otherwise you'll get like a guitar riff here and like, you know, just a little like
a percussion flourish.
Yeah, a little
bit
flourish.
Little taste of horns.
Little taste of horns, exactly.
But also I think it really I want to mention this. I think I really love like just kind of the pacing favor and like flair that having kind of narrators gives to this movie.
Yeah.
The Mariachi band is like not the choice I probably would have chosen, but it works so well.
Right?
Like they're just like singing the ballad of Rango, and he's going to die.
Right.
I was about to say I think for a kid watching it the first time, you get a very cool sense of like urgency and then subversion of the fact that he doesn't die.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
But also I think they just really help kind of fit into the vibe of this weird like a meadow western.
Yeah. No, they're a good addition.
And help just kind of make sure you're never too like flat on what's happening.
If I was a kid watching this, which I watched this when I was like relatively
we
young.
watched this pretty young. I mean, it came out in like 2011, and we watched it.
I was in like my teens when I watched it. Essentially, my young
teens. Yeah.
But I was like, if I was any younger, I would probably be a little lost without the mariachi band. Like by the middle point where I would have been like, wait, what's going on again?
For a kid, it's actually kind of a confusing plot.
I was about to say, because they don't show a lot of the stuff that they're like...
We're experiencing a paradigm shift.
Exactly. Which, again, mariachi band is a great way to like... for any younger viewers, like, kind of remind you what's going on.
I was about to say, because the plot kind of trails off weird, because you've got, like, the conspiracy with the water, with the mayor, but then you also have the fact that they're trying to rob the water, they go after the crooks, but then they find that the crooks don't have the water, but then they also have the big chase sequence, and then they finally get back, and they realize that they had stolen the water from somebody before that.
Exactly.
And, like, there's a lot going... There's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's not that crazy in theory, but it's nice to like have the narrators there to remind you.
It is nice to have them there, and I think they fit into the story very well. I think they're like used as characters in the story, like the way that Rango might be the only person that notices them. I can't tell.
I think they all look. I think they all look that direction anyway, like towards them when they're like, we ride.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That means we're riding now, at this moment.
They all, like, everybody looks that direction, but that doesn't inherently mean that they see him. It could just be Rango's looking that direction and saying something.
Yeah, no, I like the idea that it's like an invention of Rango's mind.
I was about to say, because they don't really make sense to actually be real characters.
Because I think it's like his sense of grandeur.
Exactly. Yeah.
And like, it's like his story, you know?
It's a good manifestation.
Or when they're like hanging in the nooses singing the song.
That's such a great visual. There's so many great, just like iconic visuals in this. Like you can pull, again, the character designs are part of that. But the production design and lighting and just the generally like the way it's shot, there's obviously a lot of homages to a lot of other movies, but the iconography of Rango feels very wholly original and nice.
Yeah.
You can pull up just like any of the side characters or any of the props, and I'd be like, yeah, it's Rango.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean that's Rango. Like you could spot it immediately.
Exactly.
Like, you could give me any shot from that film, and I would be able to boom, that's Rango.
Right.
I mean, it's just so unique.
Yeah, which I don't know. A lot of animated films have that just because they have to design everything from scratch. But Rango feels special.
But I think Rango is special because a lot of these shots like come from other movies. Like,
exactly.
Like whenever Rango's coming back to dirt and like you see him walking through the news and you're like, oh my gosh, that's this. And then like you see like the scene of him telling Beans to put the gun back down when all the citizens are coming to the jail and you're like, oh my gosh, that's Wyatt Earp. Like it's so recognizable as like homages to other films, but like it still has such a sense of identity.
Yeah,
each shot.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, I hesitate to compare it to Scream, but Scream has so many like horror movie references throughout it, but it feels wholly original and like singular in its own way. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh! Like
it's just like Scream.
Robbie's gonna be watching like the Muppets movie, and since they're vaguely meta, he's gonna be like, "Oh, it's like Scream,
it's like Scream, man!
It's like Scream," awesome. Because they're referencing that movies have tropes.
Oh my gosh! Let me have this.
Should have never watched Scream. Like had you tried to dissect Scream, it was a big mistake because now
it's all over.
It's like the. I don't know, man. You've never been very good at reading meta movies, and now that you have a reading of Scream,
I think even last night at the very end you compared Babylon to this, and I was like,
okay,
and I was like, that's when we started saying like everything looked to Rango for inspiration. It's now a qualifier to make a movie is to watch Rango.
I was about to say, Robbie, you need to get deeper into your film studies, so you're not comparing everything vaguely meta to itself.
I said that a shot looked like Babylon. I didn't say it was like Babylon. Micah was
making jokes about that.
It's funny though.
It was pretty funny.
That shot the shot was like
that
framed
was
like a Babylon
exactly
shot.
like Babylon shot.
Okay,
but
I'm not crazy.
You're not
I'm
crazy.
Hold on.
You're not crazy. It was just funny. You got Scream and Babylon. They're just like Rango.
It would be really funny if like you just watch any movie, you start comparing it to either a Damien Chazelle movie or Scream. It's one of the two. That's how my brain works. Yeah. Rango.
Do we have any other things we want to bring up?
Any other elements of the movie that we feel we may have breezed over? I feel pretty like well set, and I've said pretty much everything I have to say.
Talk about the story.
Yeah.
Animation, score.
Yeah.
Pacing.
Yeah, I was about to say, really the only problem that I have with it is in its pacing, and that just kind of makes it to where it's something that's never really connected with me.
Yeah,
so I've never
hard.
really been one to like. Oftentimes, like my ratings will be off of like how much a movie connects with me, as well as how good I think they are.
Mm-hmm.
And while I think this one's really good, you know, a 4 is a good rating.
Yeah, 4
it's
is
never
really good,
it's never
yeah.
really connected with me as something to give beyond that, despite the fact that I think it's really fun.
For me, it was always like the pacing doesn't detract from the story.
Yeah.
But I think better pacing could definitely elevate it. I'm going to be honest. And like, let's strike this from the record. But like, I'd probably give it like a 4.5, really and truly.
all right.
Like, just because of the pacing.
I was going to say,
Like,
if you're really
I think there
digging
is room
deep.
to go. But for nostalgic reasons, I'm going to keep the 5.
I was about to say, honestly, I don't think. I think a 5's a fine like rating if you feel like giving it a 5. Like, because
Yeah.
the difference between a 4.5 and a 5 for me is usually just how much I love
Preference,
a film.
yeah.
Because I don't think there's any like truly perfect films. There are some films that I'm like, that's pretty much perfect. I wouldn't change a thing.
Yeah.
But like even then, there's like no such thing as a perfect piece of art.
No.
So, you know, if you think it's like really, really technically great and also you love it a ton,
Yeah.
then like, yeah, give it a 5.
That's why I set my, like, the way I do, like, my ratings on Letterboxd is, like, I give 3 stars for, like, technical ability, like, the way that it was made.
Yeah.
And then I give a star for if I enjoyed it. And then I give a star for if I think this is important.
Yeah.
And so I think, like, Rango, well made. 3 stars right there. Boom.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. So there's a star right there.
Yeah.
And then I do think that this is kind of important. I think it's, like, something that definitely gives a nod to Westerns as a whole.
Yeah.
And it really sums up like the Western genre in like an hour 45 minutes.
Right.
And then I also think that it is such a unique thing in like the last 15 years. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Like you don't get to see a whole lot of unique
If you
animation.
care about like movies and animated movies or just generally movie production, this is an important movie.
Well,
I think.
not only that, I think it's interesting, and this may be kind of goofy to say because I guarantee it wasn't like Rango single-handedly doing this. But if you recall, around the early 2010s, which is when this came out, I can't think of any that came out before Rango.
No.
But like you had then his Lone Ranger, you had the remake of Magnificent Seven,
You had
Tarantino's Django Unchained,
3:10 to Yuma
you had
was
3:10
then
to
too,
Yuma.
yeah.
There was a Western resurgence.
There really
essentially.
was.
A brief little one.
We'll say it was because of Rango. I agree. Good job, Gore Verbenski.
It was a brief little resurgence. I think it would be more like realistically because of Lone Ranger, because that movie had some commercial success.
Yeah. Man, 3:10 to Yuma is so good.
But like you had right around that time a little cultural, which to be fair, it never happened with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
No.
You had no other pirate movies coming out around Pirates of the
You
Caribbean.
definitely had a lot of Westerns.
But
coming out
around
at that
Rango and
because
Lone
westerns
Ranger
are so cheap.
I was about to say around
That's true.
Rango and Lone Ranger, Magnificent Seven, Django Unchained,
Yeah.
3:10 to Yuma, a ton of Western remakes and stuff, even Buster Scruggs and like
Yeah,
that
that's a
was-
lot more recent.
I
a
know,
lot more
but
recent,
that
yeah.
was still in the 2010s. Like throughout the 2010s, pretty consistently, there were just a lot more Westerns than the
Yeah.
2000s.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. It's cool. I don't know. I love the Western genre and its tropes, and Rango loves
Yeah.
it a lot too. So
Because like the very first movie was like a Western, you know, like the train coming at the camera thing, like
it's honestly one of the tropes of Westerns.
it
which
is
quite
and
funny.
like so like the Western genre is like inherently tied to movies.
Well, and I mean, a lot of the rise of like theaters and stuff back in like the 50s and 60s, and even in the 40s a little bit. You'll get like cowboy serials and stuff,
Yeah.
which are, you know, they were monumentally like central to a lot of the theater's success among like children and like just getting people to come back to the theater, which is why cowboys have become so synonymous with movies, because their iconography was adopted so early.
And I mean, and it's like I said, like, could you imagine like superhero films, which might be like the closest thing that we have today to like Western films back then, because like every other film was a Western.
Yeah, yeah.
And now like you have like Marvel and DC.
Oh
and,
gosh, man.
Hey, well, they're dying out, man. Disney doesn't want it to happen. They're putting all their money into it.
Oh, they're really putting all their chips on the table.
They're starting to die out, guys.
I think they are starting to die out. I do think it's a shame, though.
Yeah,
I'm a big
on the
comic
decline.
book fan. But yeah, Westerns, I think like this, every time like a good Western comes out, I think it does, like it's going to cause a little bit of resurgence.
Yeah.
Because I think Westerns in film are just like a match made in heaven.
Well, I mean, people who like making movies are gonna love Westerns, you know?
I gotta take it back though, guys. There was a big Western that released right before, like a year before Rango. True Grit, the Coen Brothers True Grit.
That could not have been the case. That could not have been what caused it.
Coen Brothers True Grit, then Rango.
A remake of one of the most popular Westerns ever made by very good directors with very good actors. No way.
I was about to say, you had the remake of True Grit, then Rango a year later, a little bit later, Django Unchained, The Lone Ranger, and like it just kind of carried on throughout the 2010s.
He really did have a bit of a resurgence there for like, like 10, 15 years?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. No, we got some good like Western remakes during that time. A lot of what modern audiences consider Westerns to be come from that era of Westerns. Like that weird little 2010s resurgence. Yeah. Like when you say 3:10 to Yuma, a lot of people aren't going to think of like the super old Western. They're going to think of who did that? I think James Mangold directed the 3:10 to Yuma.
So you got Ballad of Buster Scruggs, The Sisters Brothers.
Oh yeah. I still haven't seen that.
just like a lot of there was a lot of Westerns that came out in the 2010s.
Cool. Good, I say.
A lot of Westerns. I would even almost qualify Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like it's pretty close to a Western. Like you've got a lot of Western iconography.
Yeah, a lot of movies nowadays like to incorporate like Western iconography and just general plotting and stuff into different genres. Which again, something like Nope is a good example of that. More recently,
I was about to say it's very interesting because you mentioned like Westerns being very tied to movies, but Westerns are a very unique thing because most of their stylistic sensibilities come from samurai movies, which even more so where like some of the original,
like the Magnificent Seven. It's based off the Seven Samurai.
I was about to say some of the most original like creative movies out there were samurai movies getting made. So then those tropes were carried on to Westerns, and then those tropes from Westerns have been carried on to even more movies, and you see a lot of their like symbolism and framing and stuff used in movies even still now.
Yeah, exactly. Again, in reference to my like Westerns are a pivotal part of cinema. I'm referencing American cinema, obviously.
Yeah.
Italian cinema too, right?
Italian cinema. That is very true. Well. Yeah, a lot of Italian
Which I think
Westerns.
this one lends itself a lot more to the spaghetti Western anyways.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
I would tend to agree. Which I mean, like, a lot of people who love making movies love, like, Sergio Leone and, like, a lot of Italian directors and their sensibilities for Westerns.
Yeah. I mean, they shot Westerns in very unique ways that kind of led to a lot of the tropes of Western.
Exactly, yeah. No, I love how many of the Western tropes came out of just necessity or low budgeting or stuff like that. It's great. It's a great genre.
Great genre. Lee, it's good.
But yeah, I was about to say, anything else you guys want to mention?
I think this time I mean it when I say that. I don't think I have anything else.
Rango.
Right, yeah. Cool.
Rango.
Thanks for tuning in again.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Are we gonna do what we watched?
Yeah, I figured we'd do a brief one. Well, not now.
I was going to say, that's up to him, wouldn't it be?
Have been busy traveling.
Exactly, yeah. I asked him about it.
Okay. So I have literally nothing logged for like probably the last 2 weeks about Rango. So
all right, well, then stay tuned because we're going to do a what we watch segment. But sans Kaler.
Thanks
for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining.
Excited. There's a lot of anticipation for this.
Anything you want to shout out, to give a little reference to for people to check out?
Reference to for people to check
like
out?
Letterboxd, social media, anything like that.
You can find me on Letterboxd at William Luker, I guess, if you want to, like, follow me on Instagram. I don't do a lot of movie stuff there.
Yeah.
You can. I'm not even active on that.
We'll at the very least have a link to your Letterboxd. in the show
There you go.
notes.
Link it to my Letterboxd. I give the best movie reviews.
All right. Well, Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. All right, let's go ahead and move on to what we watched.
Alright, so for those of you who are new to the podcast or have just never listened this far, the What We Watched segment is a little thing we do at the end where we talk about all of the movies we've seen since our last episode. We talk about them and give like brief little thoughts, ratings, and opinions.
Wow.
And we
Opinions
move on.
and thoughts in the same
I'm so
segment.
tired. I had to redo the intro to the What We Watched segment.
That's crazy. It's never happened before.
And I already repeated a word in what I did there. So
yes. And for reference, we are recording this on the day of release rather than the day we recorded the entire rest of the episode.
hence why I'm so tired, because we recorded in the afternoon with Kaler, and
we were bustling and full of energy. Now the energy is at a zero. We'll come to a grinding halt for the What We Watched segment.
Yeah. So we are going from the 11th, which was when we watched Zootopia.
Yeah.
So anything after that?
April 11th.
April 11th.
Absolutely.
So I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, we watched.
We both
watched a movie.
I was about to say we mostly watched
together.
different things.
Yes.
What would you watch, Robbie?
Well, the night of April 12th, I went out to Atlanta and I caught the Atlanta preview press. I guess I don't remember that premiere. That's the word I'm looking for.
It was the premiere. I thought
the Atlanta premiere for Big George Foreman: The Miraculous Story of the Once and Future Heavyweight Champion of the World, which is a mouthful of a title. So I usually just refer to it as Big George Foreman. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I was sitting on the very, very front row, though. So I was very close to the interviews, which was cool for the screening, but not so great when you're trying to watch a big screen. It was like an IMAX-sized screen, and I was sitting like 12 feet away from it.
You had to prop your neck up.
I didn't know my seat could recline until halfway through the movie, so I literally just sat there with my head craned up for like an hour. But it was fun. I really enjoyed it. It was better than I expected it to be. With these kind of smaller biopics, I'm never quite sure what to expect quality-wise, but this is probably the best version of this that I could ask for, so... it was cool. I gave it a 4 out of 5.
It was funny. I read this really goofy review for that this one person was he got an email from this thing inviting him to a premiere for it, an early, before the movie was finished, a pre-screening.
Yeah, a test screening.
And he showed up, and apparently he started to realize slowly while he was there with different weird questions and stuff that he was at a pastors only screening for it, and everybody thought he was a pastor there.
That's so funny. Oh my god.
So they're like, what church are you with? What are you planning on using this in your... And apparently he hated it. He was so uncomfortable in the screening, and then he thought the movie was just mid.
There was at least 5 confirmed pastors in the theater with me when I was watching this.
But it was that was just that review. It's probably one of the more top ones on Letterboxd. Yeah. I don't know now that it's actually premiered.
Yeah, there's not any public reviews yet.
But it was
on Letterboxd anyway.
Oh well, I guess
it'll be listed under the
that's
members,
where I found
not until it's released. It's not going to list anything.
But yeah, it was funny.
That's funny. Yeah, which is weird because this isn't a Christian movie by any means.
In his review, he literally talked about how much they sold it to these pastors, and then there was 10 minutes of it about his ministry.
I was about to say George Foreman in the movie, he goes into ministry, and it is a plot point, but it's not the focus of the movie. His spirituality and journey with God is not the main focus of the movie.
The guy was making fun of it for that. He wasn't mad that it was just a Christian propaganda piece, but just how goofy it was and how uncomfortable his theater experience was.
If you're comparing this to any of Pure Flix's movies, this is Citizen Kane, you know. It's good. So like I said, I really enjoyed it. I'd probably enjoy it even more if I could like watch the whole screen while I did, because I had to turn my head to see either side of the screen while it was playing. So
Well,
yeah, but it was good. I gave it a 4 out of 5. It was a lot of fun to go see it in Atlanta and everything.
yeah. Also on the 12th, I watched, or rewatched rather, Josh and Benny Safdie's Uncut Gems.
Uncut Gems.
And I watched it with my girlfriend, Haley.
They should cut those gems, you know? They'd be worth a little more, I guess.
No, Robbie, when it's uncut, it's in its raw state.
I know, but like people don't want to buy just an uncut gem, you know?
Only people who are willing to pay for it what it's really worth would
Wow.
buy it in its uncut state.
So how was Uncut Gems?
Uncut Gems is a masterpiece, one of the best movies ever made, probably.
Ooh, spicy. I mean, I'd probably agree that it's definitely a masterpiece, but I don't know about best ever made.
No, I think it's one of the best movies ever made.
Wow.
Second time around, it's still absolutely amazing. I just love what this movie is doing. The performances are fantastic. I always like it when I show Haley, like, I don't know, this isn't even like an unconventional movie by any means.
I mean, it's not a conventional movie.
Yeah, but it's not exactly a conventional movie that
It's kind of a strange, surrealist thriller kind of thing.
I was about to say, whenever I show her something like this that I really love, but I'm really not sure if she'll love, and then she gets super into it, I'm like, yeah, good movies. So she got really into this movie, and I was very happy about that. I mean,
it's Uncut Gems, you know?
Right. But no, I genuinely, like, man, this movie makes me surprisingly emotional for what it is, and I absolutely love it. I give it a 5 out of 5.
It's one of those, like, street level profound movies that I like, where I'm just like, dang, crying in the club right now. It's good stuff.
Then on the 13th, I watched Before Midnight.
What?
Finishing up the Before trilogy.
Wow. I can't believe it's called the Before trilogy when the last movie's called Before Midnight.
And I do not understand why people think this is the worst of them. Like, there's still a lot of people who really love this one, but in general, like among my friends on Letterboxd, this one is much lower rated than the other two.
Interesting. I think its average is pretty like on par with the other ones.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
But like, I don't get it. I thought this was literally just as good as the other two. Like, I hold these all three like pretty much on equal ground in terms of how good they are. This one was like, I don't know. I even liked I almost like this one more, and I think that's just recency bias.
Yeah.
But like, what this one is doing is really unique, even among the other two.
Interesting.
It's the most real feeling of any of them in terms of like,
doesn't feel like a dream
realism
kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the first one very much feels like a dream. The second one feels like, I don't know, it kind of plays with the different stages of love, you know? Like the first one, they're like head over heels, absolutely bonkers. The second one, they're like in this weird, like still very like hyper romantic state.
Yeah.
And then in the third one, it's like, 10 years later, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. It looks cool. I mean, I've said this every single week when you've watched one of these movies, but I really want to see these movies.
No, it was really fantastic. And see, the only thing I could think of is that it's the most like traditionally unpleasant of any of them to watch, because most of the movie is them like arguing.
Hey, I mean, you can have there's good argument movies out there.
Oh yeah, but everyone's like really invested in these characters. It's very sad to see them argue like this, Robbie.
Mike is like, we hate to see it.
But anyway, I give it a 5 out of 5. I think the whole trilogy is a masterpiece.
Very cool. And later on the 13th, we watched Rango, which we have just talked about for quite a while.
There you go.
And then on the 14th, I watched a little film called Boston Strangler.
Boston Strangler.
I keep thinking that it should be called The Boston Strangler, but it's just called Boston Strangler. They dropped the apparently. It's got Keira Knightley in it.
The contraband.
Oh no. But yeah, no, it's a neat movie. It's pretty much what you'd expect from like a period piece procedural set in Boston with Keira Knightley. Like, that's pretty much the movie, you know?
My only frame of reference for Boston right now is The Departed.
The Departed, exactly. Gosh. But yeah, it's funny. I got, since this was playing on Hulu, it had ads. I got an ad for crime movies also on Hulu, and like The Departed came up. I think Zodiac came up. I'm like, man, I wish I was watching The Departed or Zodiac right now instead of Boston Strangler.
That's funny.
But I said in my review that it's a poor man's Zodiac, and it really is. It's stylistically imitating that, which works, but it just doesn't execute it as well as Zodiac does.
Fincher-style movie.
Yeah. I would watch it again for Keira Knightley, though. She was good.
Then on the 14th, we headed out to our local AMC. And
the AMC, baby.
And caught the Super Mario Bros. Movie.
We said gotcha. We caught it. It's the Super Mario Bros.
Mushroom
movie.
Kingdom.
Mushroom Kingdom. Here we come. I can't believe that line wasn't in the movie.
Of course it's not going to. Something like that everybody made fun of so much. Of course it's not going to be in the movie.
I love how instead they just have him like the awkward silence as they walk over the mushrooms was very nice.
Right.
But yeah,
the Mario movie.
Super Mario
Bros. movie.
It's Illumination.
It's probably like Illumination's like second best movie.
Despicable Me is still the best.
Yeah, Despicable Me is still the best because Despicable
movie's
Me is like a real movie,
it's a good
and
movie.
it's like good.
Yeah, right.
Most of their movies are like bad, and this one's barely a real movie. So
it's teetering on just being like this weird collection of random scenes kind of thing instead of being like a movie. You know.
So a lot of people going into this, they're like, oh, you don't go to Mario for the plot. And I'm like, yeah, fair enough. Like, if this is going to have a light plot, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't care.
This doesn't have
a light plot.
This barely has a plot.
Barely has
literally,
anything.
It is almost like there are a few lines stitching together certain scenes cohesion.
I swear, man. It's a mess. It's a mess of a movie.
I still enjoyed this in theaters. I will admit it. I enjoyed watching this in theaters. I watched it with Haley.
There you go.
And I mean Marianne and Kaler, and you were like we were like the five of us went to the theater.
Five of us went out to the theater for this.
But like me and Haley, like we talked pretty much the whole movie. We joked about it. We were making jokes about what was happening. Mario reference jokes. Like it was a fun time in the theater for me. But the movie itself. Feels like a product specifically designed to be perfectly passable for kids and parents.
Dude, honestly, I said in my review that it gave me nothing and it left me with nothing, you know. that's kind of how my whole experience was. Like I appreciate mostly the score really, but like some of the Mario references are fun. But it is not nearly enough to hold me over for an hour and a half.
It still is really funny to me with Ryan Lee's Ryan Lee on Letterboxd review. Right. He's got the quote from the movie, which is, "That is not a commercial. That is cinema." And he's like, yeah,
sure. I'm not buying it this time. Lego Movie was the only one who could do it.
Some of the plot points are actually a little baffling if you examine them at all, and like that wouldn't inherently be a bad thing, but all of the characters are also paper thin. Like there is no character growth, there is no character development.
There are no characters.
No characters.
They're just like these weird icons.
There are these fun, bright action set pieces with a bunch of Mario references back to back to back to back for an hour and a half, and it's very entertaining for kids. And for adults who aren't engaging with it too much, they're just like, it just breezes by. It's short enough, and things are always happening.
There's always something happening. It may not make much sense in the context of the movie, but there's something.
I totally understand why mass audiences and kids absolutely love this movie. I very much get it.
I just got nothing out of it, man.
But like, it's
fine.
It is so weird. Like it is genuinely
so
weird to watch, in my opinion.
I'm imagining someone who's never played Mario watching this movie and just being absolutely baffled by everything because
right, they explain nothing of Mario.
They explain absolutely
and
nothing.
And it's just chocked full of Mario references. But the last thing I'll say about this, because we're taking a while on this one, we could do an episode on this.
Yeah, right. I would love to do an episode on Mario.
Right. But the last thing I'll say is when the movie was getting close to the end, I sat there in the theater and thought to myself, I bet this movie is getting close to the end. Because and it didn't feel like the movie was getting close.
The dramatic
to the end
tension did not have enough momentum to be like, oh yeah, this should be like where the conclusion.
Well, no,
is.
I thought that like right like during the Rainbow Road scene, I was like, you know what? I guarantee this is about to be like the last big thing before we get to the finale stuff, and it was.
Then you got the Jonah and the whale.
I was
thing.
like, that is the stupidest thing I have ever seen. Just like the structure of it is absolutely a nightmare in my mind. But again, I still enjoyed it, and it's still pretty simple. It's whatever. It was fun. I gave it a 3 out of 5.
I also gave it a 3 out of 5. If I gave half stars, though, it would have been a certified 2.5.
Then on the 16th, I tuned in to Lady Bird.
The old Lady Bird.
Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird. This was my second time watching it. It's fantastic, amazing, beautiful.
I feel like you've mentioned Lady Bird on here more times than you've actually seen it.
Because it's Lady Bird, Robbie. It's Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird.
Greta Gerwig's Lady Bird.
Greta Gerwig, director of Little Women and Lady Bird, Robbie.
And Barbie.
And soon to be Barbie.
Well, she already directed it, Micah. I think, unless they're still shooting.
She gotta like direct to the post production.
There you go. All right, but yeah, Lady Bird.
But yeah, Lady Bird's fantastic. It's very much like a me kind of movie in terms of coming of age stories, because not every coming of age story has me sold. Though I am a pretty big fan of the genre.
I feel like a good coming of age story should have everyone sold. You know.
But this thing is just fantastic. I love its religious themes. I love its like just like the way it uses character. Houston Coley in his review had a very good way of capturing kind of the way this film kind of goes about showing all of these characters alone. Like it's a very alone kind of movie.
Nice. And
it allows each of the characters, even the side characters, to really have a lot of character and emotion and loneliness throughout the movie.
Interesting. I mean, having only seen Little Women, I'm very excited to see Lady Bird.
And the mother-daughter relationship is really like one of the most interesting mother-daughter relationships I've ever seen put to screen.
There you go.
So what can you do? It's Greta Gerwig's
It's Greta Gerwig.
Or Lady Bird. See, I'm tired. I'm mixing things up. But also Greta Gerwig's Little Women is also a masterpiece. So
it is.
You know, just throw in a couple more Saoirse Ronan, Greta Gerwig masterpieces.
There you go.
5 out of 5, obviously. Then on the 17th, I finished. I arbitrarily logged this over the last like 3 or 4 nights. I had been watching Jurassic Park to fall asleep to, which may seem weird to you. You may think about that and be like, falling asleep to a dinosaur action movie? That's kind of weird. But I used to do this. Like, I don't know why, but this is just a movie I used to turn on to fall asleep to. And I know it so well, and it's just kind of like, it's almost like a comforting movie to fall asleep to for me. It does not keep me awake.
It's kind of a cozy movie.
But it's kind of cozy, so like I'll tune into this baby to fall asleep to sometimes.
Nice.
And I did that. So again, it was over like 3 or 4 nights, but it's still Jurassic Park. It's a masterpiece.
I mean, it's Jurassic Park. It's so weird. I used to think that Jurassic Park was like a lesser Spielberg.
Boo.
And back when I was first getting into his other movies.
Boo.
But I've since watched it after seeing like a majority of his filmography, and I'm like, yeah, this is one of his best ones.
5 out of 5.
Yeah.
Then on the 18th, I tuned in to my first Yorgos Lanthimos movie.
That's crazy.
We're watching The Favorite, baby.
We're watching The Favorite, as everyone should.
Bought it at the used movie store a couple days ago, and I was like, you know what? I want to turn that baby on.
On the movie that I bought. Who would have thought it?
And lo and behold, it was really, really, really fantastic. It's not my favorite thing in the world. I put that into my review that I don't think that, and I think part of that is probably because I had to stop it in the middle, and go eat dinner. Which was unfortunate, but it didn't quite, like the ending itself didn't quite hit as hard as I would have liked, especially being that I've seen so many people like praise the ending as being like the best part of the movie. And like it was very cool, but I didn't feel as much as I wanted to from the ending. But man, this is probably one of like the smartest scripts I've seen in a while.
That's all I wanted to hear.
It's so layered, and the dynamics, and somebody in, like, I was reading through reviews, somebody called this like the smartest love triangle ever put to screen, and I would kind of agree with that. I've never seen a love triangle like justify itself as being a love triangle.
That's awesome.
As much as this movie has. It's so cool to watch it because
I mean, when that's your whole movie is a love triangle, like you better hope you hit it right. You know?
Emma Stone is so like conniving and like malicious in
Evil
this movie.
Emma Stone.
It is genuinely what I think is Emma Stone's best performance I've ever seen.
I cannot wait to watch this, dude.
Obviously, the cinematography is outstanding and unique and impressive. Everybody who's talked about this movie mentions that. The score really reminded me of Johnny Greenwood, to the fact that I thought it was Johnny Greenwood through a lot of it.
Yeah.
But it's just classical pieces.
That's awesome.
And it really, like, the entire movie just made me think of like a PTA movie.
So far what you said is that it's brilliantly written, has my favorite actress in it, and looks amazing. So
And
it's
reminded me of your favorite director's
reminded me of my
writing.
favorite director. So it's kind of sounding like it's going to be the best movie ever.
No, yeah, this is a movie that Robbie will love, I guarantee. I think it's fantastic. There was actually, again, for how much I was getting into it, especially Emma Stone's performance specifically, there's this like shot in the bedroom when the one character like walks in and she sees the two of like the Queen and Emma Stone in bed, and Emma Stone's like, sure, her eyes are closed, like she's sleeping, and she's like shocked and surprised, and it's very, very dark because it's the old times. They don't have electricity. She's got like a candle, so she starts like backing up, and like she turns around and walks out of the room. And as she walks out of the room, Emma Stone like opens her eyes and watches her leave, and it's such a sick moment.
That's awesome.
And I actually like I put my hands up and was
cheering
like,
in the theater.
Like I actually like did that. That's even
awesome.
though I was watching this by myself. Like that's how into her performance I was getting. It was such a sick moment.
I watched Yorgos Lanthimos's short film and really loved it. So I'm kind of hoping that stylistically I'm gonna really enjoy this.
Nimic. I was about to say what Yorgos Lanthimos short film. He's done several.
It was really good.
But yeah, very, very interesting movie.
I cannot wait to watch it, dude.
I give it a 5 out of 5.
It looks like it's gonna be my new favorite movie, honestly.
So I watched a lot of 5 out of 5s, if you noticed, but lot of those were rewatches, to be fair.
Yeah.
So yeah, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 5 out of 5s.
Mine were all first watches except for Rango. So, but I only watched 3 movies.
I was about to say 3 out of those 5 were rewatches, only before midnight, and the favorite were new.
But yeah, Big George Foreman was fun. Go catch that in theaters if it sounds at all interesting to you.
Tell us what you thought about the Mario movie.
The Mario.
And if we should do an episode on the Mario movie.
And Rango, too.
Guys, tell us that on our Letterboxd HQ page.
Letterboxd
Recently
HQ.
logged on Letterboxd.
You can comment on the review for this episode or just on our big episode list, either way.
We would very much appreciate it.
And if you're listening on Spotify, you can answer your thoughts in like the little bubbles. I don't know how it looks. I don't use Spotify. But you I don't know. There's like a poll and there's a question section if you want
a little bubble.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
No, I don't.
You Spotify viewers, you know what I'm talking about.
Go watch Jurassic Park. It's a cinematic classic.
If you like Keira Knightley with a weird Boston accent, go watch Boston Strangler.
And have a good week. We'll see you guys next time.
Catch you in the next one.